Welcome back to the show on SNN. You know, this Thursday night, the undisputed heavyweight boxing championship will be determined when Buster Douglas puts his title on the line against Evander Holyfield. Now, the 8-month roller coaster ride for Buster, the champion, has been nice in a lot of ways. Lots of money, right? Millions, lots of exposure, going to banquets, charity events as well. But how many people in this world consider Buster Douglas the world champion? Well, this champ spoke with SNN's Wally Bruckner about preparing to go back into the ring.
Ladies and gentlemen,
in terms of preparation for this fight, more or less than the preparation for Tokyo and Mike Tyson?
I think it's been a lot more. It's been more intense, being the fact that winning the title. Now I've really put myself in a position where I have to be ready each and every time out the gate. So it's been a lot added pressure, you know, coming into this fight.
Was there anything different in your regimentation, in preparation?
Well, it was more intense. My running had increased tremendously. You know, I had a more obstacles in the running. You know, it was more intervals, more hilly, and in the overall sparring session, I brought in some excellent sparring partners that came to work each and every night. And then it's just, well, I would say the overall picture, everything has increased. That's just a few things.
How about the change in venue from Columbus and training in a shared gymnasium atmosphere to working out here in the desert?
Well, that has helped me a lot to get acclimated with the, you know, with the conditions out here. You know, so it won't be a total shock to my system. And I've been out here for now 7 or 8 weeks. And, it's a thing that my body's totally used to it. I'm used to the climate with the weather changes. And, you know, I'm just ready to fight.
And the folks that are saying that James Douglas is out of shape and weighs too much and will be lethargic, you say that's all noise.
Well, you're going to look at me and see that for yourself. That is it. You know, like I said before in the opening statements, it's amazing how they can come up with all those wild conclusions. And the thing is, a lot of it just because of the fact that I was staying away from the press and the media. Except if I was to go ahead and share time with you guys and try to train at the same time, something would be laxing, and I wouldn't be able to put out my full effort. Then I would still get knocked, you know. So I was in a no-win situation anyway.
The interval of time between winning the championship and now this fight, is that the interval of time you'd like between fights?
Not necessarily. I'd like that came back a lot sooner, but through all the ongoing ons outside of the ring after winning the title, you know, it took a little longer time to you know, get situated. And it's a thing of not really having the opportunity to really enjoy reap the benefits of being a champion and not having that time alone. You know, I was always either in court or in front of a news camera, and it was enjoyable in a sense, you know, because of finally obtaining an all-time goal, but it wasn't to the point to where I had a really lot of time for myself, you know, just a relaxation.
Has it ever sunken in because of the taintedness of being in the courts and having the settlement and the dispute over the original victory? Did it finally sink in that, yes, you had achieved your goal, and yes, indeed, you are the heavyweight champion?
Definitely, it did. It sunk in, and I was the heavyweight champion of the world. I was more than, you know, more so right off the bat. You know, I think, you know, I knew that I was the heavyweight champion, but it was a thing of all the things that went on afterwards kind of made it had a little tainted it a little bit. But for the most part, you know, I've enjoyed it, you know, and it's been a pleasure. You know, it's been more than I can ever think of it being, you know, as heavyweight champion. Something that I've grown accustomed to and I enjoy being.
SNN's Wally Bruckner is in Las Vegas, and he will have reports up to and after Thursday night's main event. John?
And so we're off to boxing. Evander Holyfield, by the way, is the favorite coming into this title bout. He is the favorite. The odds now read 8-5, advantage Evander. Now, if there is one reason that the underdog is now the choice to win, it might be because of physical shape. Not size, mind you, but shape. While critics holler at Douglas for being overweight and tired-looking and fat, Holyfield is banking on his stamina to carry him through to victory. Holyfield is smaller, of course, than Buster, but his workout regimen has included instruction from bodybuilding world champion Lee Haney and even a ballet instructor, Myra Kennett. Holyfield says he will not let Buster dictate the flow of the fight, and that the pace he will keep will be one that no other heavyweight can keep up with. The fact is that when Buster fought Mike Tyson, James Douglas did control the fight. He controlled the pace of the bout, and as a result, he won the bout. And Evander says he's going to try and fight a very quick fight, try and move and stick and move, because most people don't think he can knock Buster out, but he'll have to punch him and win by a decision.
See, the reason I think Evander's going to win the fight is because mainly the last 2 years he has been focused on one thing, that is winning the heavyweight championship of the world. He's eating 6 meals a day. He's bulked up. He's strong as an ox. And I think he's more determined than Buster Douglas to win.
And, of course, this really isn't the title fight we're waiting for. We're waiting for Foreman or Tyson or... I don't have a pick in this fight. Okay. I'll wait till the real fight comes. We'll have more...
Foreman and Tyson.
Yeah. When SNI continues in just a minute.
Buster Douglas just in the right place at the right time when he wrested the title away from Mike Tyson? Or was and is Douglas a worthy champion who should be feared every time he steps into the ring? Well, it seems that debate will rage on long past this Thursday night, but at least Douglas will get his chance to disprove his critics when he defends his title Thursday night against Evander Holyfield. Charlie Steiner heads up the ESPN crew in Las Vegas and has more on the enigmatic champion.
Well, if no news is good news, this promotion could be great. But so too will be the fight. At least that's what a lot of folks think about this thing. After all, nobody's really sure on the outcome of this deal. For James Buster Douglas, the moment of truth will come on Thursday night when he can prove that his moment in the land of the rising sun was not a flash in the pan. Maybe he is the genuine article. Certainly we will all find out come Thursday. For the past 8 months, there is no doubt, however, that it has been one long, strange trip, as Eric Clemens reports.
This 10th round barrage, ending with a crushing left hand, introduced the heavyweight boxing world to a new monster who destroyed the indestructible in Tokyo. James Buster Douglas.
I was totally relieved. I was just relieved of the fact that the war was over. I came to do a job and I succeeded, and I was very happy.
So was just about everybody, for James Douglas represented the American dream. But who was this new champion that shocked the world? Douglas found he had to introduce himself to it, and did so, willingly and gracefully. But the celebration would be short-lived. James Douglas is the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Yet there are still those who dispute his legitimacy. Cynics wonder which Douglas will show up the night of October 25th, the pre-Tyson unmotivated fighter or the tiger that showed up in Tokyo. Doubt is commonplace here in the game of boxing, and it's something Buster Douglas has dealt with in the past.
I knew that was coming, because of, the setbacks that I'd had leading up to the Tyson fight. But no, that doesn't. I'm well ahead of him.
Doubters have a strong case. Suits and countersuits involving Douglas, Don King, Steve Wynn, and Donald Trump left the fighter in a state of limbo. And 6 months off resulted in a super heavyweight Douglas, a reported 260 to 65 pounds. Knowing he was going up against Evander Holyfield, one of the best conditioned athletes in the sport, generated concern. Douglas took action, limiting the input of manager John Johnson to behind-the-scenes duties only. That move gave cause for the media to speculate. To add fuel to the controversy, the overweight champion played hermit with the media and even refused to pull off his shirt in public. Rumors of his emotional state escalated when his father, Bill Douglas, who left camp 3 years ago over a disagreement with his son's style, returned. But Buster says the reportedly strained relationship is just fine.
I love him and I respect him because he was always there for me. And not only me, for everyone, my family. And it's just a thing of, I enjoy having him around because he's an intense guy. And it's like, I know I got somebody watching my back.
Apparently, Douglas's actions have paid off. His camp feels he'll be in better condition for Holyfield than he was for Tyson 8 months ago in Tokyo. They also say the roller coaster ride that 1990 has been has matured James Douglas, the culmination of which spells trouble for his opponent.
I'm just a better man. I'm a true heavyweight, you know, and overcome the fight. You know, I'm the champion now. It's going to have to take a tremendous beating to obtain this title.
I just returned from James Buster Douglas's Las Vegas home, where tonight he told me he expects to weigh in at about 232 pounds for the weigh-in at 4 o'clock Pacific time tomorrow, which we will have live here on ESPN. Of course, on the February 10th fight card in Tokyo, he was the challenger. Tomorrow night, he will be the champion. The difference in his head, 48 hours before the big fight, then and now.
You know, winning the title, you know, that seems like it was easy, winning the title. Now the big challenge is retaining it. And that's the thing that, you know, I'm mostly considering and thinking about more so now than I was going into the title fight with winning the title. Even though I'm still in basically the same predicament, you know, being an underdog, but it's still the fact that, you know, my own personal goals and satisfaction is being able to put it on the line and getting it back. And I just want to be able to get it back with a worthy contender, and that's why I fought so hard to get an opportunity to put my title against Evander.
So much has been made this week about the weight.
I was under the microscope. You know, everybody was paying a lot more closer attention to me. Oh, he looks heavy. He's heavy, you know. But, you know, they'll see that I'm in fighting shape come the 25th. It's Thursday.
How are you dealing with life under the microscope?
It's great. I enjoy it. You know, it's an enlightening pleasure. It's never a dull moment.
But sometimes they say uncomplimentary things, too. That comes with the turf.
Well, they've been saying that ever since day one, so I'm sort of used to that. You know, that's one thing that, you know, I've learned to learn how to handle is criticism. You know, people that don't believe in you. And it's something that, you know, it never stopped me from doing what I believed in. But I knew that I could be the best at this sport. And now that I've accomplished that, they still criticize me. It doesn't bother me one iota.
Which Buster Douglas is going to show up? The Buster Douglas from Tokyo or pre-Tokyo? Does that bother you? I mean, again, the doubt about the legitimacy of James Buster Douglas.
No, it really doesn't. You know, because I'm the one that I have to live with myself. You know, I have to look at myself every day in the mirror. I don't really put too much stock in, you know, what other people believe. You know, the thing is, you know, it's no matter what has happened or what will happen, you know, I made it to the top.
This is the last word, your last interview before the fight. You have an opportunity to say to the boxing world, the United States, and anybody else who might be listening, what do you want us to tell them?
Well, you can look forward to an exciting fight October 25th. And James Buster Douglas defends his title for the first time.
James Buster Douglas was very relaxed tonight. Reports that he is tight. I can tell you, he was a relaxed guy around the homestead. Want to remind you, tomorrow at 4 o'clock Pacific time, 7 o'clock Eastern, we will have live coverage of the weigh-in. Ray Leonard joins our coverage team at that time. For now, from the Mirage in Las Vegas, I'm Charlie Steiner. Let's go back to SportsCenter.
All right, thank you, Charlie. We're still hours away from the moment of truth, and ESPN's coverage will continue through the fight. As Charlie mentioned, we'll have live coverage of Wednesday's weigh-in at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll have a 1-hour SportsCenter special, and come fight night, we'll have post-fight interviews.
Whoa, when judgment comes, I will be ready. I will be ready. When judgment comes, I will be ready.
James Buster Douglas, Evander Holyfield for the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. Brought to you by the undisputed king of beer. Budweiser presents The Moment of Truth. October 25th at the Mirage, Las Vegas.
4 hours now until heavyweight champion James Buster Douglas steps into the ring for the first time since last February to defend his title against Evander Holyfield. It's one of the most anticipated bouts in quite a while, and the weigh-in is coming right up on SportsCenter. So without further ado, let's go live now to Las Vegas and join Charlie Steiner and Sugar Ray Leonard.
All right, Tom, the wait for the moment of truth is just about here. 24 hours till the fight. Just a couple of minutes away before we find out the weight of James Buster Douglas. and Evander Holyfield. Joining our ESPN broadcast team, Sugar Ray Leonard. Ray, you've been on that scale so many times before in your great career. When you get up there in your skivvies and you're looking out and they're weighing you and the people are taking photographs and so on, what is going through the mind of you or any fighter?
Well, the first thing that crosses your mind, Charlie, is will I make the weight? And believe it or not, although these guys are heavyweights, they're very concerned about their weight. With Buster Douglas, he wants to come in as light as possible so there'll be less criticism about his weight. With Evander Holyfield, he wants to be as heavy as he possibly can be, so it'll be a much more intimidating opposition for Douglas.
So we can't expect necessarily Buster Douglas to put silver dollars in his shorts as one boxer did once in the past, but maybe we might see that with Evander Holyfield. By the way, Eric Clemens is on stage, and he will be interviewing the trainers immediately after the weigh-in. Eric, what's going on down there now?
Right, Charlie. Well, it is the word of Carole King's hit song, Anticipation. A lot of fans are here anticipating Buster Douglas perhaps to come in a little bit above the weight at 232 he fought Tyson at in Tokyo. If he does, it might just affect their wagering. Buster wants to set the record straight quickly. He's going to step on the scale first in just a few moments. Back to you.
We are 2 minutes away from the weigh-in. The anticipation continues, and so do the preparations for the moment of truth. We are coming to you live from the Mirage in Las Vegas. Back in 2 minutes.
ESPN Sports Center is brought to you by Bud Light. Everything else is just a light.
We are live at the Mirage in Las Vegas. In just a couple of seconds now, the weigh-in. About 31 hours from now, we will find out if Buster Douglas is still the heavyweight champion of the world or Evander Holyfield is the new one. For now, we know who the combatants are. Now let's go down to Robert Folk. He is the ring announcer for the weigh-in today. Robert?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mirage for the weigh-in of the main event tomorrow night, the moment of truth. Matching the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, James Buster Douglas, and the undefeated, undisputed #1 heavyweight contender, Evander Holyfield. Conducting the weigh-in today will be the Executive Director of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, with the help of J.D. Brown. The weight for James Buster Douglas is 246.
Come on, champ.
Evander Holyfield. The weight for Evander Holyfield, 208.
I don't have anybody yet. Hold on.
Well, there's a big story here. James Buster Douglas is 246 pounds, well heavier than what we expected. And Evander Holyfield is 208, a little bit lighter. Eric Clemens is down on stage now. Eric?
All right, Charlie, thank you very much. J.D. McCauley, James Buster Douglas' co-trainer. J.D., 246, a little bit heavier than you expected. Will it have any effect on your fighter for this fight?
I mean, I figured he was going to be about 238. We're still talking about 8 pounds more than I figured. I don't think so. We'll just have to wait and see. I really can't see it. Everybody thinks that it's a done deal that we're going to lose. But come Thursday night, I guarantee you Buster's going to be out there punching. That's bull.
All right, J.D., thank you very much. Good luck to you in the fight. Standing by now, Dan Duva. The trainer for Lou Duva, I'm sorry, Dan is the other one. Lou Duva, the trainer for Evander Holyfield. Evander was looking to come in around 210. He came in at 208. First question for you.
Right.
How about the other fighter? Buster Douglas, I heard you say we're home when Buster weighed in at 246. What do you mean by that?
I think they're going to roll him into the ring, and they're going to carry him the hell out of here. After with 246, how can a fighter come into a ring 246 pounds?
All right. Now, what about your fighter at 208? Was he a little bit lighter than you anticipated at 208?
No, we were shooting at 210, give or take a pound. That's all we were shooting at. He came in at 208, no problem at all. He's going to be fast. We're not going to fight this guy with brawn. We're going to fight this guy with smarts and movement. That's what we're going to fight him at 208. He's going to be the faster fighter and the stronger fighter.
All right, Lou. Thank you very much.
Fine.
Back up to you, Charlie.
All right, Eric. 246 pounds. You said to me as he got onto the scale he looked good, but I'm not sure he feels good about that weight.
No, to be perfectly honest with you now, Charlie, the way I see it, if Buster Douglas doesn't get Holyfield out there in the earlier rounds, he's in for a long and very grueling night.
208 pounds, a little bit lighter perhaps than we expected.
Yeah, but it's very tight and very defined. I think with Holyfield, his main objective is to go to the midsection. And if I was him, I'll go there too.
So let's take a look at the tail of the tape now. Evander Holyfield gives away 38 pounds. As far as the biceps are concerned, Douglas is an inch bigger. As far as the fist is concerned, an inch bigger. The reach, 5.5 inches bigger. And the height, 1.5 inches bigger. And the belly, a lot bigger. This has got to be enormously disconcerting to the Douglas camp. J.D. McCauley just told Eric Clemens that Douglas weighed in about 8 pounds more than even he expected.
It's quite disturbing and should be quite alarming for the Douglas camp, because at this particular weight, I guarantee you won't see the hand speed, you won't see the combinations that he threw against Tyson, you won't see the mobility, you'll see much more of a stationary target from Douglas.
You know, it was interesting, we were talking a little bit before, Ray, that the odds were beginning to even out. I got a feeling now the odds are going to plummet.
I'm looking forward to seeing the odds change. It changed drastically now, because that weight was a surprise to everyone.
So what does this do now to Buster Douglas's game plan? He's going to have to get him out quick, presumably.
You will see Buster Douglas being probably a little more aggressive, try to get inside and try to drop that big right hand or the uppercut. With Holyfield, you'll see a lot of body shots.
Ray Leonard and I will be back at 11:30 Eastern Time on SportsCenter. Don't forget, tomorrow, a full 1-hour edition of SportsCenter at 7 Eastern Time. We'll be here, and then immediately after the fight tomorrow night, our patented post-fight analysis. For now, Ray Leonard, Charlie Steiner, and Eric Clemens on stage. Now let's go back to SportsCenter and Tom Means. Tom?
All right. And Bill, thank you. Thanks, guys. Now, if you're Evander Holyfield, you got to be Fred Astaire for the first few rounds of this fight. You got to dance your way away from Buster Douglas and hope to catch up with him in the later rounds.
Lou Duva said they don't roll heavyweights in at that 246. Well, he hasn't seen George Foreman fight of late, has he?
Apparently not.
We start with boxing in the moment of truth. I think that moment was when Buster Douglas stepped on the scales. I heard a groan. It may have been from the scales.
Yeah, I think it was maybe a crack in there. George Foreman waiting for these two guys. He's about the only guy that could put Buster's weight to shame. Evander Holyfield remains the clear favorite with the bookmakers, but just as the odds were about to tighten up, maybe go even, Buster stepped on the scales and tipped the balance again. Charlie Steiner brings us up to date on this eve of the moment of truth.
Well, there really hadn't been a whole lot of news generated around these parts until about 4 hours ago at the weigh-in. Last night at his home, Buster Douglas was sitting around relaxed, and he told me he expected to weigh in today at about 232 or 234 pounds. But when he stepped on the scales and tipped the scales, and did he ever tip the scales, boy, was he surprised.
The weight for James Buster Douglas is 246.
I heard you say we're home when Buster weighed in at 246. What do you mean by that?
I think they're going to roll him into the ring, and they're going to carry him the hell out of here. After with 246, how can a fighter come into a ring 246 pounds? Buster has to fight Evander Holyfield tomorrow night. The Scales is not going to fight Evander Holyfield, nor the commissioner or anybody else. We got to face this man. And the only thing I can tell him is, if anybody thinks that weight is going to make a bit of difference, then run out and bet some money on Evander Holyfield, because we're going to fire him up.
Within the first hour of Buster Douglas stepping on the scales, $120,000 was wagered on Evander Holyfield. who weighed in exactly where he wanted to be, and he felt pretty good about it. 208 pounds for Evander Holyfield. This is Sugar Ray Leonard, who's never weighed 208 pounds in his life, and good Lord willing, he never will. You said, as we were watching the weigh-in together, as Buster Douglas got on the scales, hey, he looks pretty good. And then they announced the weight, and I said to you, hey, it looks like he's in the 40s. You said, no, it's got to be a mistake.
Charlie, to me, from where I was sitting, he looked in pretty good shape. I mean, there was no grotesque fat or anything. His love handles on the side. And I figured he'd come in about 234 at the most, but when I heard the 246 being announced, I was taken back by that.
What does that tell you about not only his training, but his trainers? Who was keeping him in check?
It's apparent that no one paid attention to his weight, and neither did he. It's just so bizarre to me that a guy that looked so well against Mike Tyson at 231 would allow himself to become 246 for his first title defense. I don't understand the theory behind that.
What is he now going to have to do, or what do you suppose he is thinking about tonight? Would you suppose he was surprised? What do you think he's thinking?
There was no expression on his face of surprise. I think one thing to keep in mind that Buster Douglas is, in fact, a big man. And he carried that 246, pretty well. It was not at all, like I said before, on the side. My only thoughts is the fact that he's planning on going right at Evander Holyfield, trying to out-muscle him, out-strength him, and turn into a street brawl.
There is a 34-pound weight discrepancy between Douglas and Holyfield. Weight has never been a problem for Evander Holyfield. He's always around 210 pounds, checked in today at 208, as he is getting ready for his moment of truth. It seems as if Evander Holyfield's career has always been in the shadows of someone or something. We were first introduced to Holyfield at the Olympics in 1984 in Los Angeles.
Just as he was holding me, and he was holding me around my head, and I threw a left hook, and the referee shouted break at the same time I was punching. Clear as day, I knocked the guy out, and the referee said break at the same time. And the referee counted the guy out, in which I thought the fight was over. And the referee came back and told me that I was disqualified.
As much as the boxing community was outraged by the referee's decision, they were impressed by Holyfield's demeanor. A surefire gold medal winner in the 190-pound weight category, he would settle for bronze. How could he maintain his composure at one of the most disappointing moments of his entire life?
I feel that if what I had to say would make a difference, then I would speak. But what I have to say didn't make a difference, then why should I speak?
That uncanny composure comes from the most influential person in Holyfield's life, his mother.
I was the youngest of 8, and when we stayed in a tough neighborhood, we stayed in a government project. But I guess my mother is different. My mother instilled a lot of good values in us. She instilled the discipline, the value of $1, and most of all, she instilled for us to work for what we want.
As the cliche goes, the 28-year-old Holyfield lets his fists do the talking. And in the ring, where his record is 24-0, 20 by knockout, they have spoken eloquently since turning pro late in 1984. But while he was beating up all comers, Holyfield, as a junior heavyweight or a cruiserweight, if you will, was still best known as the guy who was disqualified from the Olympics. Evander became boxing's first undisputed cruiserweight champion 2.5 years ago when he knocked out Carlos De Leon in the 8th round of their fight. But being a cruiserweight, after all, means a life of relative anonymity and comparatively small paychecks. But under the tutelage of boxing's odd couple, Lou Duva and George Benton, Holyfield put on 20 pounds of muscle. Rarely do you see a better sculpted physique in boxing than Holyfield. But a great body doesn't necessarily make for a great heavyweight.
The public doesn't perceive Evander Holyfield as a true heavyweight, and he isn't.
When you're talking about strength, you're talking about a lot of different areas. And, you know, a person can be physically stronger than another individual, but, you know, mentally, he might not be. And I feel that mentally, the man that's strong mentally is the man that usually going to win.
Even Holyfield's critics admit that his mental toughness and his ability to summon that extra something from his inner being is every bit as defined as his chiseled body. Being mentally strong is one thing, but getting hit too much, and his defense has been suspect, is another.
He's catching him here and he's catching him here. So when the punch comes, it seems like he's getting hit because he's catching the punch close like that. But he's not actually getting hit with those punches. No, I grant you that one fight in particular, he did get hit with a few punches, and I asked him, did he know what he was doing? And he said, yeah, and I told him to quit doing it.
Holyfield will give up at least 25 pounds and about 2 inches to Buster Douglas on Thursday night. He's not afraid of Douglas, but there is a fear which motivates him the most.
I think pretty much the fear of losing. You know, I like winning, but it's kind of embarrassing to lose. And sometimes it really don't make a difference who won the fight, but it's just like it do make a difference who lost it.
From the bronze medal winner who should have won gold to the cruiserweight champion in a world of heavyweights, Evander Holyfield finally gets his night in the light after a career of living in the shadow of doubt. All right, Ray, 38 pounds is what Evander Holyfield gives away. What is he thinking about tonight?
Well, if anything, it's more of a reassurance that he has a larger target to throw punches at. With Evander Holyfield, I mean, although Buster Douglas comes in at 246, it's still a tough fight for him, mainly because Buster Douglas is a big man. He's tall, long arms. He's all the other physical attributes that make it difficult for a shorter fighter.
Ray Leonard and I will be back tomorrow night hosting 1-hour special coverage at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, and then, of course, immediately after the fight, we'll go on into the early morning hours. That's it from Las Vegas. Let's go back to SportsCenter.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. You know, I was kind of surprised that the odds were staying at 8-5, got down to 7-5, especially since most of the writers had picked Douglas. 27 out of 37 writers covering in this fight have picked Buster.
Yeah, you also had 13 of the 15 ex-heavyweight champs who are going to be at ringside pick Buster Douglas. I don't think the weight hurts him until later on in the fight. He's got to put Evander down early because Evander's going to stay away from him. He's a better conditioned guy. If he stays away, he's going to try to steal a decision.
Yeah, we'll see if those aerobics pan out for Evander Holyfield. It isn't always a deficit to fight at a heavy weight, which Buster will be, a little heavier than these guys, but these guys were all champs when they fought at this weight, including Muhammad Ali at a whopping 230 for a couple of fights, but he won both of those, but Buster isn't anywhere near the most bloated.
Yes, we've got the Canvas Quakes, some of the bigger ones in boxing history, and of course, who could forget Primo Carnera, who fought at 270 pounds, 86 more than the challenger. He won. Jess Willard, though, was a loser when he was 58 pounds heavier than Jack Dempsey back in 1919. Joe Louis, well, he gave up 52.5 pounds to Abe Simon and Larry Holmes. He weighed 211 against Leroy Jones, but Holmes was a winner, so I guess 38 pounds difference between Douglas and Holyfield doesn't sound like too much when you look at those guys.
For Holyfield, for all of the heavyweight marbles tonight in Las Vegas, they're calling it the moment of truth, but if the truth be known, the moment of truth may have arrived a day early at yesterday's weigh-in. We turn now live to Charlie Steiner in Las Vegas. Charles?
Well, Bill, the moment of truth is about 3.5 hours away, and as you pointed out, and a lot of folks around here might subscribe to the theory that the moment of truth took place yesterday afternoon about this time when Buster Douglas weighed in at 246 pounds, but not by any stretch the heaviest he has ever been. There are more limousines riding the streets of Las Vegas today than the taxi cabs, denoting, of course, the heavyweight championship is just a few hours away, and the temperature will not be a factor at all. 65, 70 degrees come fight time about 3.5 hours from now. It's been a bright, sunny, beautiful day in Las Vegas. Somebody who has fought in the desert on more than one occasion over his great career, Ray Leonard, joins us now. When you're getting out there in 65, 70 degree whether that's probably an ideal situation for a fighter.
It's a perfect, as far as heat is concerned, Charlie. One thing about it with the lights, the additional lights, that's an additional 20 degrees hotter. When I fought Durant here back in December, I mean, the lights didn't help at all. But with these guys, it's a very comfortable weight, comfortable heat factor to fight in.
Of course, in the gym, it's generally a good deal hotter than that. Of course, the story has been Buster Douglas and the 246 pounds in which he really tipped the scales. But Buster Douglas has been heavy before in his career. As a matter of fact, in his 4 losses, as you take a look at the screen, David Bay weighed 271 pounds, did Buster Douglas against Bay in his loss. Against Mike White, 254, Jesse Ferguson, 242. And at the other end of the scale, in the fight in which Douglas, in essence, quit in the ring, he was 227. So what we can make of that 246 pounds, what does that story tell you, Ray?
You know, Charlie, when Buster Douglas hopped on the scales last night and tipped it at 246, I was shocked. Like, in fact, everyone in the room was shocked. But last night I thought about it. I said, you know, you can be in shape and not necessarily make the weight. He looked very trim to me. He doesn't look grotesquely out of shape. Buster Douglas, I believe, is in shape because he knows fully well that Holyfield will be going right for him.
We'll, of course, be talking about the fight and how we can handicap it as this special 1-hour edition of SportsCenter continues. But as far as the fight tonight is concerned, there will be a clear winner and loser. But come tomorrow morning, the very power of the heavyweight division will be determined by the outcome of tonight's fight. Ever since Buster Douglas separated Mike Tyson from his mouthpiece and his heavyweight title 8 months ago, the division has been transformed into a political and pugilistic battleground. At stake, the ultimate power in the fight game's most powerful and richest division. At the moment, Buster Douglas wears the title belt. And because he fights for Steve Wynn, it is Wynn who wears the money belt. But that is all subject to change. If Evander Holyfield wins on Thursday night, then Holyfield becomes the champion, and his promotion team of Dan Duva and Shelley Finkel, they start to call the shots. Holyfield has already agreed to fight George Foreman, regardless of the outcome of Thursday night's fight, sometime in April. With the heavyweight championship at stake, Holyfield would make about $16 million fighting Foreman, who was promoted by Bob Arum. George would make about $12 million, and it is fair to assume that the fight would not be at the Mirage. So that would remove Douglas and Wynn from the heavyweight picture, at least for the time being. But if Douglas beats Holyfield, then he will fight Mike Tyson next, in a rematch, in the spring, at the Mirage, which would keep Wynn and his hotel front and center. Last Friday, Don King may have thrown a monkey wrench into this heavyweight scenario when on his stationery, he claimed in a press release that the WBC, the WBA, and the IBF had mandated that his man, Mike Tyson, be the next challenger of the winner of the Holyfield-Douglas fight within 120 days of Thursday night's fight. 3 things are curious about this release. 1, it was on Don King's stationery. 2, generally speaking, a mandatory challenge has to come within a year, not 120 days. And 3, Evander Holyfield has already signed to fight George Foreman next.
The moment I saw it, I thought it was unusual that it was on King's stationery. But then I thought, no, in light of the way he tried to take Buster Douglas's title in Tokyo, it was entirely predictable. But at least in Tokyo, they waited until 30 seconds after the fight to try to take his title. Here, he's trying to take Evander's title, and he hasn't even won the darn thing yet.
Tyson, who of course is promoted by Don King, is scheduled to fight the hard-hitting Alex Stewart on December 8th in Atlantic City. They were supposed to have fought one another back in September until Tyson suffered a gash over his eye when he and his sparring partner Greg Page accidentally butted heads. But if Douglas should beat Holyfield on Thursday night, most people expect that Tyson would not bother risking a rematch with Buster by fighting Stewart. So if Douglas should beat Holyfield Thursday night, there would be 3 losers. Holyfield, obviously. George Foreman, whose contract to fight Holyfield next, would pay him $9 million less if it's a non-title fight. And probably the 3rd loser, Alex Stewart, who would be out one significant payday if, as expected, Tyson opts to bypass Stewart for a direct shot at Buster Douglas. Oh, and there is one other heavyweight who may just be the best of the bunch, the Canadian, Donovan Razor Ruddock. who suffers from a double whammy. A lot of talent and not a lot of public notoriety. There is no sense and not nearly enough dollars for Douglas, Holyfield, Tyson, or Foreman to get into the ring with Razor Ruddock. At least not now. After we initially reported this story earlier in the week, Bob Lee, L-E-E, the president of the IBF, cornered me yesterday and let it be known that he had nothing to do with that press release that Don King issued. He, in fact, is going to take up that very issue with Don King first thing tomorrow morning after the heavyweight title is won by either Buster Douglas or Evander Holyfield. Joining us as well, as you saw Ray Leonard earlier, and here's Al Bernstein. As we pointed out in that story, Al, the state of the heavyweight division, of course, with all due respect to welters and middleweights, is the preeminent division in the game. And the power of the game will be determined by the winner and loser tonight. The Duvas, of course, have a vested interest in the outcome. George Foreman has a vested interest in the outcome. Don King, Bob Arum. This is a fight that goes beyond the fighters themselves.
Oh, it really does, because we're so used to a division in which Mike Tyson has dominated. His promoter, Don King, has pretty much called the shots. And now it is all up in the air because George Foreman's sitting there knowing, and he's aligned with Bob Arum now, knowing that Holyfield wants to fight him and will fight him. That would be the first heavyweight fight other than this one that would completely eliminate Don King. And then what of the Mirage, which is playing an active role as a participant, really is almost as a promoter in this fight.
And perhaps the guy who's got the most at stake in this fight is George Foreman, because as the contract goes, if he fights Evander Holyfield for the title, he would be out to make about $12 million. If he fights Evander Holyfield in a non-title fight, it's a $3 million fight. He's got $9 million riding on this fight, right?
That's a lot of motivation for one big man, and I'm sure he will accommodate those numbers.
Where do you see this heavyweight division going now, especially if you would have thought that Don King, the WBC, IBF, WBA would have learned their lesson in Tokyo, as Dan Duva said in the piece. 30 seconds after Douglas won the title, they're trying to take away from him, and now he's alleging if Holyfield wins, they're going to take it before he even gets it.
Well, I'll tell you, my feeling on it is that the IBF would be the one organization that would probably stick with the winner of this fight not having to do a mandatory defense against anyone, as they shouldn't. I think you got to give the guy one shot at fighting who he wants at least before you start making him fight Mike Tyson. But I'll tell you what, I'm not so confident with, let's say, the WBC, for instance. Something may happen there where they may come up with some cockamamie ruling, and the sad part of all that is we may end up with split titles again.
We will continue our special one-hour edition of SportsCenter. We are live at the Mirage in Las Vegas, about 3 hours and change away from the moment of truth. The heavyweight title is on the line, and we'll be back a little bit later from Vegas.
ESPN SportsCenter, brought to you by Michelob Dry Beer. Once you experience the bold taste with no aftertaste, there's no going back. And by the all-new Nissan Sentra, the first affordable sports sedan.
We know that Buster Douglas is going to make $24 million tonight, and Evander Holyfield will gross $8 million, win or lose. And in the big business of promoting prize fights, that is the question surrounding Steve Wynn. Will he and his casino win or lose?
The fight is going to do a lot of business. We're going to come out just dandy on the fight.
Wynn, of course, is hosting and promoting tonight's heavyweight championship, and in some cases, it hasn't been easy.
We didn't have the marquee value, I guess, was the word that the press used, of the wild, humorous antics of a Muhammad Ali, or the smooth and unbelievably eloquent experience of Ray Leonard in talking to the public. And we didn't have the fascinating, dark, brooding personality of a Mike Tyson.
The chairman of the board of the Mirage paid $32 million for the right to promote and stage the fight. But the cost didn't end there. Wynn and the Mirage had to pay out an additional $8 million, including legal fees to get Don King and Donald Trump out of the picture. So the fight actually is costing Wynn more than $40 million. The fight itself, according to nearly every independent source we've spoken to, will have a difficult time turning a profit. But it is unfair and inaccurate to compare Wynn with other fight promoters, because he also runs, arguably, the best-known casino in the world at the moment.
A promoter's at a disadvantage. Believe me, if Don King owned a hotel, he'd be doing the same thing. If Bob Arum owned the Hilton, he'd be doing the same doggone thing. And he'd be laughing all the way to the bank, because he'd have ticket sales, and then he'd have casino money, right? But so they can't compete, and I don't blame him for screaming.
Any mistake that could be made, Charlie, they made, and they're in a situation now where they're looking at a loss that is locked in at over $10 million and probably can go as high as $20 to $25 million.
We've been in every newspaper, radio, and television for four or 5 months now. So to me, that's worth $50 or $100 million if you had to go out and pay for it. So we can't lose.
While Wynn's expenses for tonight's fight are something more than $40 million, this is what he can reasonably expect to recoup. The unknown factor being pay-per-view. In a best-case scenario, 1 million homes at $35 a pop will be tuned in. About half of that money will go directly to Wynn, who is in charge of everything. There is no middleman, including the pay-per-view dollars. Wynn has promoted this fight as if it were a Las Vegas stage act. The billboards for the fight in this town are every bit as evident as the ones for the high-profile entertainers. The slick TV ads have been a major ingredient in promoting the fight, because neither Douglas nor Holyfield are particularly spellbinding personalities. The bottom line on the bottom line, Steve Wynn could have paid for just the right to host the fight, rather than promote the entire thing. He would have made more money in the short term, but his pay-per-view involvement could be only the beginning for him in staging pay-per-view acts from the Mirage, based on the lessons he has learned in producing and promoting tonight's fight. So much for the marketing of the fight. Now let's get ready to rumble, with all due respect to our ring announcer tonight. When Buster Douglas weighed in at 246 yesterday, we started to talk a little bit about how his strategy and perhaps Evander Holyfield's strategy was altered. What do you mean?
Well, I felt that if Douglas came in lighter, he would do a lot of mobility, moving around the ring, using that good stiff jab, and just trying to outscore, keep his man on the outside of the left jab. And when the time presented itself, the opportunity presented itself, the uppercut. Now at 246, I look forward to seeing a much more stationary Buster Douglas, maybe a stronger Buster Douglas, a more physical Buster Douglas. So I envision Buster Douglas being a different kind of fighter inside, trying to wear the smaller guy down.
Now, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree with Ray, and I'll tell you that the part of that you can add on is the fact that what he probably will do, knowing that Holyfield has been a slow starter before, he may go right to the center of the ring, stand there, pop those double jabs, and load up with the right hand in the first and second round to see if he can take Holyfield out of there. Because if he does that, he's in good shape. And if, in fact, this 246 is a 246 from neglect and training, then Buster Douglas knows that he is going to have a big problem in those later rounds, and I think he has almost got to get Holyfield out in the first 6 rounds.
Well, that seems to be the consensus around these parts. It's a tale of two halves. The first half of the fight would presumably belong to Buster Douglas, and the second half, Evander Holyfield, the man who's in better shape.
I think with Holyfield, he takes unnecessary shots, and you can't afford to take those kind of shots from a guy like Buster Douglas, or even a big heavyweight. And he's been able to withstand that because of his resilience, but I truly believe that to be hit by a Buster Douglas is totally different than being hit by Michael Dokes.
So let's get down to brass tacks. Who do you like in this fight, Ray?
I pick both guys, but I would say this. From 1 to 8, I say a TKO by Buster Douglas, but from 8 until, I would say Holyfield by knockout.
And Al Bernstein.
Well, again, I agree with that assessment. The only difference is I'm going to be just a smidge bolder and say that I think Holyfield will probably win in a late round TKO or very possibly a decision, because he throws double the amount of punches of Buster Douglas. But as Ray said, watch Douglas early because he'll be dangerous.
And of course, if Evander Holyfield should win, the entire shape of the heavyweight division would take on a whole new look beginning tomorrow morning. We will continue our live coverage from the Mirage. I want to thank Ray and Al. They'll be joining us later tonight after the fight, and we'll have more experts. Eric Clemens is standing outside Buster Douglas's locker room. We'll go to him and some other experts on our team when we come back in just a minute.